Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into Ezekiel chapter 12. And in Ezekiel, the 11th chapter, the Lord had ended the vision that he was showing Ezekiel pertaining to what was happening or what was going to happen in the land of Israel to the inhabitants over there for the violence and the mischief and the wickedness that they were committing over there, from the leadership all the way down to the average individual. Okay, so now in Ezekiel chapter 12, as it says here, Ezekiel prepares for exile. The Lord basically has him perform these actions, okay, that were symbolic to represent once again what was going to happen to Jerusalem and the Israelites that were there. Okay, being that Ezekiel was in Babylon at this time. So this is Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 1. The word of the Lord Yahweh also came unto me, saying. Now, keep in mind that at this point in time, if we look up, let me see, Kings of Judah. See if we can find a good. Okay, this is not too bad. It's not too good, but it's not too bad. So as you can see, you have, after the kingdom was split, right after the reign of King Solomon, you had the first king of the northern kingdom, which was Israel, or otherwise known as Israel, was Jeroboam, and then the first king of the southern kingdom was Rehoboam. Now, when you come down right now, what we're reading about in Ezekiel, this is happening around this time period here. Okay, after Josiah's death and all of that, but more specifically right around this area, 597-ish, all right, where Jeconiah is captive in Babylon with Ezekiel and the rest of, some of the captives of Judah. And you still have people in Jerusalem, right? Zedekiah, which was a puppet ruler. He was a king set up by Nebuchadnezzar to reign and pay tribute to him. And you had Jeremiah and so on and so forth that were in Jerusalem at this time. Okay, so Zedekiah was the last, I guess you could call him king, but in actuality, if you really look at it, he wasn't really, he was put there because of what happened to Jeconiah. But anyway, keep that in mind, so we'll come back to that. So verse 2, it says, Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house, which have eyes to see and see not. They have ears to hear and hear not, for they are a rebellious house. All right, meaning that in this instance, you have these Israelites here, which, the Lord sends the prophets amongst them, right? Shows them what is the right thing to do, and yet they refrain themselves from that, right? Similar to the book of Isaiah, the 30th chapter. All right, how they basically tell the prophets, don't tell us the right things, okay? Tell us the smooth things. They know what's right, but they do what's wrong because they're rebellious. And the scriptures tell you that to the Lord, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Verse 3, Therefore, thou son of man, prepare thee stuff for removing, and remove by day in their sight, and thou shalt remove from thy place to another place in their sight. It may be they will consider, though they be a rebellious house. So the Lord is telling Ezekiel, pack your stuff. All right, pack stuff, that you would, like if you were moving somewhere, pack stuff that you would move with. And when you're doing it, do it in the daytime, in their sight, in the sight of the captives, so they can see what you're doing. Okay, because this is supposed to be a sign unto them, right? So do it in their sight. And it says, and thou shalt remove from thy place to another place. So the Lord is basically telling Ezekiel, get your stuff, pack it up. I'm going to have you move. You're going to leave this house wherever you're at, and you're going to go somewhere else. But you're going to do it in front of them so they can see it. And perhaps they might consider and say, yo, what's going on here? What does this mean? Verse 4, Then shalt thou bring forth thy stuff by day in their sight, as stuff for removing. And thou shalt go forth at even in their sight, as they that go forth into captivity. So the Lord is saying, now you're gonna bring out your stuff, right? The stuff that you're packing to move, and you're gonna do it in front of them, okay? And then in the evening, you're gonna leave. And when you're leaving, you're gonna basically imitate somebody that is being taken captive from their homeland to a foreign land. That's what the Lord is telling Ezekiel to do here. Okay. And keep in mind too, it was brutal, right? Because imagine an army comes to invade another region, right? Another army. Here are the details, right? Not everybody comes on a horse. You have horsemen, then you have chariot men, you have chariots, elephants, and so on and so forth. And then you have footmen who march. Okay? So when you have troops and they're going to a certain area, they march on foot, they go. Okay? So that's how they move. So keep that in mind, that even as a soldier, it wasn't easy because you were walking a lot of the times, running. And then imagine if you're a captive and you're being taken from one region to another. And I'm not talking about you are maybe one of those captives that is like Daniel or somebody that's going to be preserved to be in maybe the king's court or something like that. No, you're just like a regular individual. Guess what? Do you think that the invading army is going to bring chariots to carry you from Jerusalem to Babylon? Hell no. You're going to be shackled up and you're going to walk. Okay? That whole route. So can you imagine what that's like? So being taken captive from your land to another land is not really fun. There are people that will die along the way. They can't take it. It's too much. All right. So when it says, when, like, for example, a nation takes you and they take you into captivity, they don't put you on KLM or Virgin Atlanta or whatever, Delta Airlines, pack everybody on there and then fly them to the other region. No, that's not how it works. They don't put you in a coach bus and then drive your ass over there, give you pretzels and shit and them little small, juice boxes. You don't get that. You get the hot ass sun, you get the whatever weather it is, and you walk. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So the Lord is telling Ezekiel here, so act like you're going into captivity. Okay? Verse 5, dig thou through the wall in their sight and carry out thereby. So basically dig a hole, a path in the wall. Now, keep in mind that back then, the houses, the buildings weren't like the buildings that you have today. You're like, how the hell are you going to dig inside of a concrete wall, for example? So it's probable that whatever kind of building material they used was something that you could actually break through. Okay, but it was still solid or effective enough to house you. But anyway, the Lord is basically saying, you're going to dig a hole in the wall and you're going to carry your stuff out through that. So the Lord is really telling Ezekiel to be pretty dramatic here. Okay, because you want to get the attention so they can see and wonder, what the hell is he doing? Verse 6, in their sight shalt thou bear it upon thy shoulders and carry it forth in the twilight. So remember, you're going to pack your stuff in the daytime in front of them. And then you're going to dig a hole in the wall, make space in there. And while they're watching, you're going to put your stuff upon your shoulders like somebody who's been exiled. And you're going to carry it forth in the nighttime. Thou shalt cover thy face, that thou see not the ground. For I have set thee for a sign unto the house of Israel. So maybe he used his hands to cover his face. Who knows? All right. But once again, you got to think in a practical sense, right? This is the Lord telling him to do this for visual purposes. Now, if you're going to be moving, it doesn't make sense to have a blindfold on and not be able to find your way across. And then you out here, hurting yourself, stumbling and falling. Okay, so maybe he used his hand, but the point is that the emphasis was that you're not supposed to see the ground. Some translations have it as basically the region that you're leaving. Like you're leaving it, you're not supposed to see it. You're not looking at it. Okay. In this case, you've been exiled. You've been taken taken out of your hometown. For I have set thee for a sign unto the house of Israel. And I did so as I was commanded. I brought forth my stuff by day, as stuff for captivity, and in the even I dig through the wall with mine hand. So what that means is, like, in today's day and age, if something happened, if there was an emergency, if there was only a few things you can grab, your most important things, your clothes, like maybe a few clothes, some provisions, you would take those. And you'll see sometimes they'll show you, like, some of these shows in like certain countries, they'll have, like, one example is they'll have like a sheet and they'll have a stick, and they'll basically tie up whatever they can grab up into that sheet and tie it on the stick, put the stick on their shoulder, and then they'll just walk with it. All right, so this ain't, oh, let me unplug my PS5 and try to pack it up in here. Let me take the flat screen TV off the wall and unmount it and no. Okay. Thou shalt cover thy face, that thou see not the ground, for I have set thee for a sign unto the house of Israel. And I did so as I was commanded. I brought forth my stuff by day, as stuff for captivity, and in the even I digged through the wall with mine hand. I brought it forth in the twilight, and I bare it upon my shoulder in their sight. And in the morning came the word of the Lord Yahweh unto me, saying, Son of man, hath not the house of Israel, the rebellious house, said unto thee, What doest thou? What are you doing? Like, one day you laying on your side, you're doing this, you're doing that. Now what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And like I said, remember that Ezekiel was not like just some regular man walking around. Okay, he was one of the priests. So whatever he was doing, people would notice, they would see it, and it would garner attention. And that's what the Lord wanted in this case. So he's saying, nobody asked you? Haven't they asked you yet? Like, what are you doing? Why are you moving from your house with looking like you're a captive going somewhere? Verse 10. But when they do, say thou unto them, this is the reply you're going to give them. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, this burden concerneth the prince in Jerusalem and all the house of Israel that are among them. Now, this is why in the beginning of the chapter I showed you the chart that had the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah. So at this point in time, the prince in Jerusalem here is referring to Zedekiah. He was the ruler, or the quote unquote king at this time that Nebuchadnezzar had placed in that seat. So the Lord is telling Ezekiel, when they ask, tell him the sign that I'm showing you is concerning or related to Zedekiah and the rest of the people over there in Jerusalem. Okay, that are in Jerusalem over there. Say, I am your sign, like as I have done, so shall it be done unto them, that they shall remove and go into captivity. So that's why I look like I was a captive, leaving my home, going somewhere else through the wall, because that's to represent what is actually going to happen to them over there in Jerusalem. And the prince that is among them shall bear upon his shoulder in the twilight, and shall go forth. They shall dig through the wall to carry out thereby. He shall cover his face, that he shall see not the ground with his eyes. Now, let me actually look up one word in here real quick. Let's look up the word cover. Okay, to conceal, to hide, for protection, overwhelmed, to cover. Okay, so now, where are we at here? Let's read this again. So basically there was going to come a time when Zedekiah was going to have to, as it says, he shall bear upon his shoulder in the twilight, which is basically saying that he was going to have to take the little that he can scramble at the time, and he's going to have to try and flee and go forth. And they shall dig through the wall to carry out thereby, because when this was actually going to be fulfilled, they were under siege. I remember that you had the armies of the Babylonians outside, and then you had the wall of Jerusalem, dividing the outside from the inside, the people that were inside the city. You had the fortress, the wall. So they had to make their way through the wall and escape. And that's what they did. However, as we keep on reading here, It says, he shall cover his face that he see not the ground with his eyes. My net also will I spread upon him, and he shall be taken in my snare. And I will bring him to Babylon, to the land of the Chaldeans. Yet shall he not see it, though he shall die there. So Ezekiel prophesied this about Zedekiah, that the Lord said, this is going to happen to him. They're going to make it out the walls. They're going to try to escape, but they're going to catch his ass. That's what the Lord is saying. My net also will I spread upon him, and he shall be taken in my snare. Now, when we actually go, let's go real quick to the book of 2 Kings, 25th chapter, not the 245th, 25th. And in here, as you can see, Nebuchadnezzar besieges Jerusalem. What's happening in 2 Kings 25 is what Ezekiel was prophesying about from the first chapter up to where we're reading now. And I'm sure the Lord continues to tell him about, hey, I'm going to do this. Hey, I'm going to do this. That happens. And we read about the record of that in 2 Kings 25, because this chapter is actually when Nebuchadnezzar goes back to Jerusalem and lays siege to it and actually breaks through the walls and all of that. So the prophecy of what's going to happen to Zedekiah, the reason that Ezekiel said here, or the Lord was telling Ezekiel here to tell them that that Zedekiah was going to be caught and brought to Babylon, but he wasn't going to see it. The reason was because when the Babylonians actually came to besiege Jerusalem, which they did that because Nebuchadnezzar set up Zedekiah. When he took Jeconiah, the previous king, captive to Babylon, he said, appoint Zedekiah the king. He's going to be the one that pays tribute to me. Like, he's going to be under me. But Zedekiah ended up revolting. If I remember correctly, he basically tried to make a deal. You know, he joined with the Egyptians and they try to be like, nah, F this. All right. But long story short, he said, I'm not doing this. I'm not paying tribute. I'm revolting, which caused Nebuchadnezzar to say, all right, now I'm going to come down and besiege this place and just take it all down. So that's why Nebuchadnezzar ended up there in the first place. Now, when he did that, Zedekiah tried to flee with a few of his armies. They tried to escape, him, his sons, you know, I'm sure maybe his wives. They actually tried to run away. And as they were running away, they got caught. And when they caught him, as we're about to read here, they killed Zedekiah's sons in front of him, and then they took out his eyes. So he was basically blinded in the sense that he didn't have any eyes. They plucked them out, and then they took him to Babylon, where he ended up dying. So that's what Ezekiel was talking about when he said here that the Lord said he was going to bring him, right, Zedekiah, to the land of Babylon, but he wasn't going to see it because his eyes were taken out. So let's read about it. This is 2 Kings 25, verse 1. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his host, against Jerusalem, and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. Now, it doesn't mean that the city was under siege for 11 years, okay? But it was besieged onto the 11th year. So somewhere around maybe the 9th year or so. Yeah, somewhere around there, around the 9th or 10th year of Zedekiah's reign is when the siege happened. Because I believe it lasted for, they put it somewhere around 18 to 30 months. But long story short, Nebuchadnezzar came, verse 3, and in the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night, by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Right? Now the Chaldees were against the city round about. So they had surrounded the city, and the king went the way toward the plain. So he fled with his armies. And the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king, this king being Zedekiah, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. And that's just so you can get a visual of that. Let's see, map of ancient Israel. Will this do? Yeah, this will do. So you can see Jerusalem is highlighted there in the red. And you can see Jericho is highlighted there, right there on the right. And that region is, like, they call it the plains of Jericho, right? Because it's not, Jerusalem is more mountainy. As you go more towards Jericho, you descend down more into like a plain-ish kind of region. And then as you go further, I believe there should be somewhat like a valley around there as well. But he got caught right around there. Okay. And as we keep on reading, verse 25, and the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army were scattered from him. And keep this part in mind. So they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon in Riblah. So they captured him, brought him to Nebuchadnezzar, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. And that's how he ended up there. So that's what Ezekiel was prophesying about here in Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 13, that he shall not see it, though he shall die there. And I will scatter toward every wind all that are about him to help him, and all his bands meaning armies, and I will draw out the sword after them. See, and that's what we just read, that when the Babylonians started chasing them, right, it says here that the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army were scattered from him. So they booked it, they dipped. So much for long live the king. Anyway, verse 15, and they shall know that I am Yahweh, when I shall scatter them among the nations and disperse them in the countries. And that's what happened, right? As we were reading it, it said that some fled by night, into the different regions. Verse 16, but I will leave a few men of them from the sword, from the famine, and from the pestilence, that they may declare all their abominations among the heathen whither they come, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. And that was so, right? As we keep on reading here, there were some people that survived the siege. Some of them weren't taken captive, and they were still in that land. Eventually, some of them ended up going into Egypt and going into the different neighboring lands, because dwelling in Jerusalem wasn't sufficient or sustainable for them, right? So let's read a little bit more here. Actually, we'll come back here as we read in Ezekiel 12. Verse 17, moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, eat thy bread with quaking. So far, Ezekiel has done all these that the Lord has asked him to do. And the Lord says, when they ask what it is you're doing, why are you doing this? Then you tell them this is a sign of what's going to happen to them in Jerusalem. And in particular, what's going to happen to Zedekiah as well. Verse 17, moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, eat thy bread with quaking, and drink thy water with trembling and with carefulness. So eating your bread with quaking, you're not comfortable. You're not sitting there like some dudes out here. Anyway, you're not sitting there munching on this like it's the best meal you've ever had. You're eating it with fear, okay, trembling. Drinking your water carefully, with caution. Verse 19, and say unto the people of the land, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, of the inhabitants of Jerusalem and of the land of Israel, they shall eat their bread with carefulness and drink their water with astonishment, that her land may be desolate from all that is therein, because of the violence of all them that dwell therein. So, as we read, obviously there was a famine that was gonna come upon them, but eventually they were gonna be taken out. The land was gonna be desolate because it was gonna be destroyed, and they were gonna be removed from there as a result of the wickedness, the violence, the wickedness that they were committing in the land. And by doing so, they were polluting the land. Verse 20, and the cities that are inhabited shall be laid waste, and the land shall be desolate, and ye shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh. Now let's come back to 2 Kings 25 and let's read a bit more. Verse 8, and in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire. And all the army of the Chaldees that were with the captain of the guard brake down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon, with the remnant of the multitude, did Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carry away. But the captain of the guard left of the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. So there were a few of them that were left. Not everybody was completely destroyed or taken captive. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldees break in pieces, and carried the brass of them to Babylon. And then it goes on, so on and so forth. But the point here is that they burnt it, they destroyed it. Everything Ezekiel was prophesying about, them laying the land desolate, that's what they did. Verse 21, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, what is that proverb that ye have in the land of Israel, saying, the days are prolonged, and every vision faileth? And that's basically, now when it says in the land of Israel, meaning that you can imagine that for a period of time, this became a known thing where you would have people that would scoff at the prophecies that they would bring about to say, the Lord said this is going to happen. Because remember, it wasn't very often that a prophet would say something and like the next day it happens. Most of the time, when they came to prophesy concerning what would happen to the nation or a certain tribe, this is something that would happen years later, decades later. So it became easy for the scoffers of the Israelites to make up that proverb to say that the days are prolonged, meaning time just keeps on going and going and going, and all these prophecies, these so-called visions, they failing, ain't nothing coming to pass. Okay, you're just saying that. It's been what, 10 years, 20 years? Where's the prophecy at? Ain't nothing coming over here. So the Lord is saying, that's that proverb that they have in the land of basically making light of the prophecies, the message that I've been giving my prophets to tell them. Well, now you tell them this, right? Tell them, therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will make this proverb to cease, and they shall no more use it as a proverb in Israel, but say unto them, the days are at hand, and the effect of every vision. So the Lord is saying, I'm gonna put an end to that. Okay? For there shall be no more any vain vision, nor flattering divination within the house of Israel. And a flattering divination is likened onto like a smooth saying. You know, they just tell you like a divination. When you divine, you're sort of saying, this is what's going to happen in the future. But a flattering divination is one that's oftentimes vain. It's not really. It's like flatteries. When you flatter somebody, in most cases, when you flatter somebody, you don't really mean that. You know, and in most cases, the point of flattering somebody is to make them get you on their good side. So why do you need to flatter somebody? Maybe your CEO is fat and ugly, but you got to make her feel like she looks good so that she can like you and maybe promote you. It's not really true, but you say it anyway. So when they're like flattering divinations, most of the time they're not really true, but they're said because they sound good, or you know, they're used to some benefit. But the Lord is saying here that that's not going to be the case. In order for you to even have the ability to make up this proverb or use it anymore. For I am the Lord Yahweh, I will speak, and the word that I shall speak shall come to pass. It shall be no more prolonged. For in your days, O rebellious house, will I say the word and will perform it, saith the Lord Yahweh. Now, one example is Jonah. right? When Jonah prophesied about what was going to happen to Nineveh, that didn't come to pass until years later, decades later. Okay, in fact, Isaiah even prophesied about this, where the Babylonians coming up in here and doing what they did. And he told this to King Zedekiah. I'll see if I can find the account, but it's locked here for the noise in the back. But I'll see if I can find the account. But basically what they're doing, not what they're doing, what happened was that the Babylonians came in to visit Hezekiah. And Hezekiah showed them, his palace and all these good stuff, nice things. And so after they left, Isaiah came there and said, what happened? And he told them, they came in there and they wished me well and yada yada. And he said, you showed them all these things here, right? Guess what? There's going to come a point in time when all these things you showed them, they're going to come in here and they're going to take it. Okay, they're going to take it. Now, let me see. Maybe if I type it in here, Isaiah's prophecy about Babylon. Isaiah 44 and 21. Okay, let's go to that real quick. Isaiah 44 and 21. Let me see. Is this the actual one? For outside. No. That's not what I'm looking for. Activity to Hezekiah. Okay, Isaiah 39. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Isaiah 39. Hezekiah shows his treasures. How many? Okay, this is... Yep, okay. This is cool. Let's read this real quick. This is Isaiah 39 and 1. It says, at that time, Merodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he heard that he had been sick and was recovered. And Hezekiah was glad of them and shewed them so now keep in mind, the letters and presents came by messengers, right? So it says he was glad of them and shewed them the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah shewed them not, being the messengers of Babylon. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto Hezekiah, and said unto him, what said these men? And from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, they are come from a far country unto me, even from Babylon. Then he said, what have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, all that is in mine house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them. Then said Isaiah to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come, that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away. And sons meaning his descendants. And they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. And where have we read that before? Then said Hezekiah to Isaiah, good is the word of the Lord Yahweh, which thou hast spoken. He said, moreover, for there shall be peace and truth in my days. So this is just a quick account of that, right? That even in the time of Hezekiah, which, let me see if I can go back to the Kings of Judah timeline, and we can just take a quick look. Which one was it? I think, no, it's not this. Damn. Hoping I could find a decent looking one. You know what? We'll just go with this, right? This, we can follow along. The green indicates the kings of Judah. So as you can see, when you come down, damn, I really like the other one though. It had the timelines, the dates on it. Let me see if I can just find that real quick. No, I just had it too. Okay, maybe this will do. Yeah, this will do. Nope, it's the northern kingdom. What's this? Yes, this works. All right, so we'll just go with this. So you can see if we go up the ladder, you see here, you see Hezekiah, right? So Hezekiah, after Hezekiah, you had Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, and then you had Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and then Zedekiah. So there was quite some time that passed between when Isaiah gave this prophecy, at least 100 years minimum, and when it actually happened, right? So this, like for example, this is an example where you would have Israelites say, well, if Jeremiah came and said, oh, the Babylonians are coming to take us captive and they're gonna do this and that, somebody could say, oh, that you saying the same thing that Isaiah was saying, but Isaiah ain't here no more. Where they at? We still waiting on them. They're not here yet. So the Lord is basically saying, look, that proverb that y'all been saying, that saying of like today, Jake will tell you, oh, you know, my grandma been telling me that, that this was gonna happen, but they've been saying it for years and nothing happened. That's like the equivalent. And the Lord is saying, well, guess what? I'm telling you now that these things that I'm saying it now, and it's gonna happen in this time. So let's finish this off. Verse 26, actually 25, it says, for I am the Lord Yahweh, I will speak, and the word that I shall speak shall come to pass. It shall be no more prolonged, for in your days, O rebellious house, will I say the word, and will perform it, saith the Lord Yahweh. Again the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, behold, they of the house of Israel say, the vision that he seeth is for many days to come, and he prophesieth of the times that are far off. So once again, going back to that proverb, but also now you had Israelites that were amongst the captives here, because remember, Ezekiel was prophesying to them as well, saying, look, the Lord is going to do this to those people over there and the Israelites there in Jerusalem. He said he's going to do this. He said he's going to do that. He's going to bring them here. Nebuchadnezzar is going to go and do this. But you had some of them that were saying, yeah, he's talking about some, prophesying of times that are far off, maybe sometime later in the future. Verse 28, therefore say unto them, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, there shall none of my words be prolonged any more, but the word which I have spoken shall be done, saith the Lord Yahweh. And guess what? That same rule applies today. The Lord is going to make that proverb to cease. Because people thought that, oh, we've been saying this for years. Oh, y'all elders, y'all been talking about World War III and martial law and FEMA camps for years. And, well, guess what? Now it's coming to pass before your eyes. All right. So anyway, with that, that's the end of Ezekiel, the 12th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. And in closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodesh. Until next time, Shalom.